You're listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Careers Podcast, Episode 8.
Welcome to the Public Health Epidemiology Careers Podcast, where we explore public health epidemiology careers and share tips and strategies to help you enter or transition into the field. And now, your host, Dr. Charlotte Hughes Huntley.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate you tuning in. Last week, I talked to you about my journey into public health. I talked about how I transitioned from healthcare into public health and all the lessons that I learned, or maybe the main lessons that I learned along the way. And I'll also let you know that I would be continuing with sort of a part 2, if you will, keeping the same kind of thought process in line from last week. So this week, I'd like to pick up sort of where I left off. But what I want to talk about today are some tips that are going to help people transition into public health field. So if you want to get a job in public health, these tips that I'm going to share with you are going to be really helpful. This will apply to you if you've already completed your degree and maybe you've been frustrated, because I hear a lot of the frustration from people almost every day who have completed their degree in public health on whatever level, either a master's or their doctorate, and they're just a little frustrated because they haven't gotten into the position that they wanted to be in. And this happens for a number of reasons. I don't ever want anyone to feel like I am, pointing at you, fussing at you, or, talking down in any way if you're in that frustrating place. I understand that place. I do understand what that feels like. I talk to a lot of the students, and I really have a compassionate heart for the students because I keep wanting to emphasize to you where you are, that it is so important to try to maximize that journey through graduate school so that you can increase your chances of having a smoother transition into the field that you want to be in. When we are so busy with, getting through graduate school and just trying to survive it, we don't really realize that there's so many little things that we could be doing along the way to help maximize that journey so that we are better prepared when we graduate and we're ready to go into the field. So when I talk to students, when I'm addressing you and I'm talking about different things that you can do and apply where you are, I'm not trying to bash the people that didn't get a chance to do that, or maybe didn't focus on that, or didn't realize the significance, or was just too busy. I'm not bashing anybody or knocking anybody. I'm just realizing that this is an opportunity for you as a student to be able to maybe learn from some of these messages that you're hearing and maybe refocus and apply some of the things that I talk about here in your situation where you are. And maybe there are a few things that you can do a little differently to get more out of that journey and better prepare you so that, like I said, you can kind of reduce that stressor and those bumps that a lot of us hit trying to get from the degree into the field. So, on that note, at the time of this podcast, I'm actually preparing to host a workshop. I'm going to try this out. It's a virtual workshop for online graduate degree students because I really want to get in front of you and just be able to, this is a free workshop. I'm just going to talk about some of these things that I've touched on in the different episodes, but just kind of get us off to the side in a way that we can talk about them a little bit more directly, and I can really help you with that. Now, whether it's you attend the workshop and you're able to take that and move on. If you decide to, enroll in the program that I developed, that's great. But I really regardless, it's important that I try to reach students where you are and help you understand that there are things that you can do now that will help increase your chances of a smoother transition once you finish your degree and a better chance of you getting where you want to be and moving into the position you want to be in, with the reduced amount of stress. Okay. So that information for the workshop is on the main page of the website. So if you go to drchuntley.com, there's a little message there that lets you know that you need to register. It's free, but you do need to register for it. That workshop is coming up. So depending on when you hear this podcast, it may have already passed. So let's move right on in. So I want to talk to everyone, but again, I guess if I had to kind of highlight a certain group of people, I would say those of you who have already finished your degree and you're trying to figure out what to do, or maybe you're close to the finishing mark and you're trying to get into the field that you want to get in. Wherever you are, just take what you can take from this, apply it where you are. How about that? And just try to make the most of it. These are I guess, really valuable, bits of information. They come from my own personal experience and some that I've pulled from some of my colleagues as well. But I am going to go through them with you, and the notes will be on the website, but I am developing something a little different by kind of pulling all of these, last week's episode, this episode, and the one that I'm going to share with you next time together in a guide that I will have available in a short period of time here that you can download and really be able to, I won't call it an ebook because it's not going to be that comprehensive, but it's a little more than just a guide, I guess. So I'm not sure what to call it, maybe a mini ebook, but it'll be something that a tool that you can download and access and kind of revisit some of these things that I've been discussing and I will be discussing. So that is to come, but the notes will be there. The podcast, you can replay that as much as you like, but just know that there will be something that you'll be able to download coming shortly that you don't have to worry so much about trying to take notes out of these episodes. It'll be something that I'm creating that you'll be able to access soon to, revisit all of these points. Okay, so the first thing I really want to emphasize to you, this will be tip number 1 if we were numbering them, but just realize that you can get there. You can get into the position, the area of public health that you want, but it will take some time. It will take some careful thinking and planning. So regardless of where you are, whether you're in school or if you already graduated and you've been trying, you can get where you want to go, but it will take some careful thinking and planning. Okay? But you can get there. Now, the second thing, number 2, is identify what you want and what is required. So educate yourself about the options. Learn about the position that, and the skills that are required for that position that you're interested in. Try to identify a role you want to move in. So students, carefully select. This is a hot tip for students, okay? So as you're assigned research top projects and assignments, carefully choose your topics and your projects, because this is an opportunity for you to explore and learn about other positions and topics of interest to you that will help you identify what you want. You can eliminate some things pretty quickly, or it could help you realize that I want to learn more about that. But when you're given a topic or, a project, an assignment, select, a disease area or a position that is of interest to you to give you an opportunity to explore and learn more about it, since you've got to go through the work anyway, right? So it's a way to make the most out of that assignment. So that's just a little tip for students. Okay, so after you've kind of identified what you want, what's required, then the next tip or the next point, I guess, is to conduct a honest self-assessment or evaluation. All right, determine if you have the skills that are needed, if you already have them now, or identify what training you might need in order to gain those skills. Plan for it by either adding a course or, getting a certification or volunteering. But be really honest with yourself about what your strengths and weaknesses are. Once you realize whatever that position is or whatever it is that you're interested in, look at what's required for it and then see what, assess where you are and what you need, and just be really honest with yourself about that so that then you can figure out how you can go about getting what you need. Like I said, adding a course or the certifications or volunteer, those are some good ideas and some hot or common topics that or suggestions that come up with when it comes down to having to gain or learn a skill set and preparing yourself for a position. Okay, so the next tip that I want to mention to you is to prepare your resume or your CV, and you might want to prepare one for each position. So if there's more than one position that you're interested in, and that's perfectly normal, that's very good. But if you have more than one position that you're interested in, you may find that it's helpful to have more than one version of your resume or CV that you develop. And it doesn't mean that you are falsifying anything. You want to be able to focus on highlighting skills that you have that meet the qualifications for the position of interest. And if there's more than one position, you might want to highlight different parts of your skill set so that you're helping to make it a quick identifier for the recruiter so that they can see very quickly that you match up or how you match up with, your skill set, your at a glance. So you want to make sure that you understand what that position is, what the requirements are, the skill set that are typically they're looking for, and then you want to make sure that you're highlighting, you're emphasizing those skills, the qualities that you have that meet those, qualifications really well on your resume and your CV. And this is something you want to invest your time and your resources into doing this. So you want to really take your time. You want to be intentional and very careful and very detailed about preparing your CV and your resume. So this is where if you don't have the ability to do that yourself, the skill set to do that, the patience to do that, then this is where, I can't tell you what to do, but I would definitely recommend investing in someone who can, or someone who does that for a living, or someone who has that knowledge and that maybe that's their strength to be able to really put together a very concise and professional resume or CV. This is definitely worth the effort and the attention, because this is very pivotal point. This is very crucial to you being able to, it opens that door. The right one will open that door, get the right attention. So it's something that is worth the investment and the time. And again, students, if you do any sort of special reports, any research, activities, internships, anything like that add a skill set or experience, you want to emphasize that or highlight that on your resume as a skill set. So find a way to do that adequately and appropriately. And if you don't know how to do that already, invest in someone or some resources that can help you apply that, properly. A little side note in addition to that is that I would definitely explore what's available through your school's career development type of resources. Sometimes they will have resume building tools, CV building tools, webinars, information that help you to learn how to really put together a good, strong CV, or they may even have offer a service that if you put it together, they revise it or give you feedback. If that's available, I would explore what's available at your school. And even if you've recently graduated, it may be a service that's available to alumni for, maybe recent alumni or it's just worth investigating to see what your options are. And just however you do it, whatever you decide to do, I strongly recommend you putting the time and attention into really getting that well developed. And once you do, it's we'll get back to that in just a little bit, but it's important to get that put together. Okay. So prepare your CV, your resume for each position, maybe a slightly different version for each position that you're interested in, and keep that handy. All right. So the next thing is you want to follow or create a path for transitioning. So what I mean by that is if you are currently in public health and you are working on your degree, then continue to gain experience while you're completing your degree. So you're following a career path. You're following a path that's kind of natural. You want to combine your degree and experience in the position that you're currently in to help pivot you and kind of point you in the direction and prepare you to advance toward the position that you want to be in upon graduation. So last episode, I talked to you about how I realized sort of retrospectively that there were a lot of duties, a lot of skills that I had obtained that were public health, skill sets that I didn't realize or acknowledge or recognize them as being public health skills at the time. So there may be, if you're currently in public health, but maybe not in a position that you want to grow into and you think, oh, this is not really a significant job or this is just, whatever. Don't downplay it. Really think about what you've learned about public health so far. Look at your requirement, the duties, the responsibilities that you have, and apply any of those duties, those skills, that experience that fits the public health category. You make sure that you're emphasizing that. You make sure that you're compounding that. You're building on that. And then if there are opportunities where you are to learn a little bit more, to gain a little bit more experience, grab a hold of that while you're already in position. You're there. Start creating that atmosphere, sort of massage the area so where you are so that you can get everything you can out of that. And genuinely, and I don't mean in a manipulative way. I just mean, if you're in a position to learn something extra, do something extra, and then, like I said, on top of realizing what skill set you're already applying, then pull that in with the education, the degree that you're earning, so that you can combine your education and your experience and better position you to advance into a career. That's what I mean by follow, or, like this sort of natural path for transitioning into the career that you want to be in upon graduation. So, you want to combine what you're doing, earning that degree, and then you're going to realize from the previous points that we talked about what the skill sets that is needed for the position you want to be in, and just start to create that pathway, follow that pathway to get you where you want to go. Another example, kind of aspect of that whole path to transitioning is to, take your current position and skill set, if you're not already in a public health agency, then take the current skill set that you have and then enter into a position within a public health agency. So, for example, last week I talked to you about I'll use myself in this example. I was a medical technologist, and I worked in microbiology, and I worked for hospitals. So I accepted a position within the Bureau of Laboratories, which is our state public health laboratory. So because it was building that position, I qualified for it because of my credentials as a medical technologist. I just moved from a healthcare setting into a public health setting. And then that positioned me for public health experience, because I was in a public health setting. I was learning what that all meant because I was in school at the time. So I was able to highlight the experience I was gaining in a public health setting, along with the other skill sets that I had identified as being part of, or relevant to epidemiology. For me, it was the surveillance and the data analysis and the data collection. So all of those skill sets I identified, I was able to highlight those, and it helped position me along with completing my master's degree for what was to come next, and that forward progression into a position as an epidemiologist. So that's what I mean. If you're either already in public health setting, maximize where you are. Build on those current experiences, complete your degree, and progress forward. If you're not in a public health setting, but maybe you have the ability or the potential to move into a position, that applies for a lot of positions. Think of nursing. There's plenty of positions. If you have the opportunity, you have to be a little creative, but if you have the opportunity to take your current credentials and skill set and apply that into a position for public health, it may not be the ultimate position that you want to be in, but it's definitely an option to consider, because it's something that could get you a step closer. It then puts you doing the same work that you're doing right now, but instead of in the industry that you're in, you move into a public health setting. So then you're positioning yourself to gain some public health experience, still using the same experience and knowledge, skill set that you currently have while you're completing your degree and preparing to move forward. It may take a few steps, but it's a way of, creating that path and transitioning into where you want to be. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so the next point is I want to talk to you about building a bridge or connection. And this goes a little deep, so just kind of follow with me as I break this down. So one thing I would suggest is regularly, we talked earlier about creating your CV and your resume, and it may be more than one version, okay? But once you invest that time and those resources and the energy and the attention on it, and you've got a good solid resume, a CV that you feel really represents where you are, well, the next thing you need to do is you need to regularly revise that. You need to revisit it. You need to scan through it. You need to add to it as you gain new skills and knowledge, and you take on a new task at work. You may take a workshop, a training. You may go to a class, get a certification. all of those things need to be added to your resume in real time. You don't need to wait until you're ready to look for a job, then decide, okay, I want to add all this stuff and fix my resume up. You really need to get into the mindset of keeping that perpetually ready. So even if you're not actively looking, you're not really thinking, I'm going to change anything, you just always want it to be up to date and ready. So as you, like I said, complete certifications, courses, skill sets, whatever trainings you do on the job, you want to add those skill sets to your resume and keep it current, keep it up to date. You want to make sure that it's always a relevant right now reflection of your skills and expertise, and you're always highlighting properly what needs to be highlighted. You also, as a part of this whole bridge and connection building, you want to make sure that you keep your resume and your CV handy. Keep it where you can easily access it. And I have always learned this in different career development trainings, and I really saw it in action years ago. This is years and years ago, but my bureau chief kept his CV on a flash drive that he kept connected to his keychain. And we were having a meeting one day and he needed to have his CV to sign off on something. And he just kind of pulled out his keys, plugged that into the computer and accessed it right away. And I just kind of made a mental note, thought that was kind of neat. Now, of course, we don't really do things like that nowadays. We don't really keep that kind of information on a keychain necessarily, but, I would still recommend that you keep your resume, your CV in some sort of a secure cloud-based, location, something that is secure and safe, but you can easily access it from wherever you are, whenever, so that when the opportunity arises, you want to always be prepared. So even when you're not looking, because that's sometimes when the best opportunities come your way, but you always want to be prepared and you always want to have that accessible, really easily. You can easily put your hands on it. You don't want to have to wait and go dig it up and take a couple of days. You just want to have it accessible, up to date, current. All right. So the next part of this whole building the bridge and the connection is create a profile on LinkedIn. If you have not done that already, you need to do that. If you have one now, think about look at it closely, do that whole evaluation and look at what needs to be updated. I think it's a good practice, just like I talked to you about, continue to revise your resume and keeping it current. And you should do that with your LinkedIn profile as well. That's like you're walking your living resume in a sense. So with that in mind, your LinkedIn profile should have a current professional photograph. A LinkedIn profile needs to have your professional photo, and it needs to be current photo, not a 10 years old photo, not a picture of you at the party but a current professional photo. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to go out and book a photographer and the expense of a professional setting if that's not within your means or your ability to do that, but it still needs to be professional and in along the lines of professional, not something that's taken from a party, but something that is in line with what you think of being as an appropriate professional photo. And the best thing I can do or recommend there is look at the people in your network or the people that you look up to, that you maybe think of as a role model, or just glance through some of the people within your network and see what what the photos look like to give you sort of an idea. And use your judgment there, and I guess I'll leave it at that. But you do need to have a photo on your profile. Okay. And then another thing I guess I would emphasize with LinkedIn profile is just be genuine and sincere when you're connecting with people. I mean, this is networking. It's about building professional relationships with real people. So you want to connect with people who are, people who are where you want to be. Okay. And then you work to naturally build those relationships. And I emphasize that because that really makes a difference. It's not just a matter of getting a certain number of connections or just clicking and connecting with people or sending a request and never looking back. Look at the news feed, look at what people post and interact when you feel that it is something that is, of course you want to make sure it's appropriate and you want to make sure that it's in line with things that are aligned with, because people look at those things. So if you're interested in a certain area, make conversations, enjoy, get into a conversation. Don't get into heavy debates. I would really not recommend that. I would be careful about what you post. If you're having a bad day, if you're having something negative going on, I would really, really recommend against putting anything like that on LinkedIn. I would really suggest staying away from I can't tell you what to comment on or what not to comment on. I would just ask you to be really cognizant of that and be thinking about what you're doing before you do it or as you do it, because LinkedIn is a professional network, and I can't emphasize enough from personal experience, very much so, that it does matter. And you'd be surprised at how the connections and the opportunities that come from LinkedIn. And that, I know you've probably heard that if you haven't experienced it already, but there are an incredible amount of opportunities that come your way through LinkedIn. And that's real, and I'll leave it at that. So when you are networking, build relationships and be genuine. I have some of the best relationships developed from my connections on LinkedIn. And when people ask questions, I talk to you guys about this all the time. When people ask questions and I respond, I care. So there are times that I go through and I'll just scan through messages. And I set aside time to do this. And I'll look at a note, maybe that an interaction with someone from a long time ago and I hadn't heard from them. And I may send them a message and say, hey, how's it going? What are you doing now? How are things going? How did you get, whatever it was you were working on before? Did you get that worked out? Did you find your solution? Where are you now? As sort of an update. And it's really because I sincerely want to know how they're doing. And I love to hear the stories about how people are, moving right along and things are working out and they're making progress. And I think it's always nice. I love it when people reach out to me and say, hey, how's it going? How did you work this out? Or where are you now? Or I think, things are going really well, or just that, little interaction about, a research project that someone's doing for, it's a network, and it's about building relationships. And these are professional relationships, but we are real people behind these digital screens. So when you think about that, just keep that in mind as you progress and you build your LinkedIn profile, because it's more than just a numbers of connections and people that are just kind of obscurely there. It's really about, and it doesn't mean weigh down people in your network and hammer them and constantly on them. It just means to be genuine, be sincere. And then you'll be surprised at how the network and those connections and those relationships, and it sometimes turn into really good opportunities for you through LinkedIn. So I really encourage you to have a good, professional, accurate, up-to-date profile and check it often. Okay, and then another part of this is just to make sure that your other social media sites are in order and appropriate. So again, just there are a number of social media sites. You have public profiles. Just make sure that you're thinking about that. Not that I won't say be paranoid or worried about what somebody's going to see necessarily, but just as a rule of thumb, I think as an overall rule of thumb, it's just good taste, good practice to just be cognizant of what you're posting, where, and keep in mind that sometimes your professional connections will overlap with your personal connections. It happens sometimes, especially when you're thinking about social media and the way the platforms are integrated. So just, it doesn't mean that you have to be rigid and, you can't have any fun, you can't post fun stuff. That's not what that means. It just means be aware. Okay. So sometimes it's just as simple as that, just being aware that, you are a professional, and this is, even though your personal site on this one social media outlet, you may not think of it as having anything to do with the other one, but just keep that in the back of your mind, that I think it's a good overall rule of thumb, a good practice to just be cognizant of your social media presence and all on all of the different outlets. All right. And then I would also recommend, again, this goes under the whole building the connections and the network, but I would recommend Indeed or other similar types of sites. So you can create a profile on Indeed, and you can upload your resume, your CV, and you can set notifications and preferences, and you can search for jobs, and you can also have the option of having employers or potential employers search and find you. So I can't say, for sure that this is definitely going to be the thing that's going to work for you, but it's definitely a good option. I would recommend it. I would suggest checking it out. You can decide if you really want to do it or not, but it's a good way. It's another professional network, and it's a good way to open the door for opportunity. And just as you have to develop your own system for keeping your resume, your profiles, everything up to date. So whenever you update in one place, it needs to be updated everywhere you have it, just to stay very current. And it's not that it's that difficult. It's really a matter of an awareness. So once you go through the trouble and the effort and you put it together the way you want it, every time you update something, you just want to make sure you're updating across all the platforms that you have it, you've shared it to. Okay. Now, the last thing that I will touch on in this whole bridging and under this umbrella of building a bridge and connection is join associations, and not just join them, but really become actively involved. Network with the people within those associations and build relationships with people in those associations. So one of the best ways to do that is by attending conferences. I know that coming up, we have the American Public Health Association conference. It's going to be in Atlanta the first week in November. And I've mentioned this in a couple of different places, but I will be presenting and sharing my research there. So I'm very excited about attending that conference. And I hope to be able to meet with any of you that are actually going to be at that conference. Find a way to get in touch with me. Come to the website, send me a message, let me know. I love that opportunity to interact with people in person. So when you attend a conference, another one that I will be also attending is the Obesity Society. I'll be sharing research there, and that is going to be in Washington, D.C. It's going to be before the American Public Health Association conference. But they just happen to be very close together, and that makes for a little bit of a hectic transitioning, like in the season here for me. But I know that happens with a lot of other people too. But the point is that when you are a part of association that you are drawn to, connected with, what either has something to do with your professional connection, maybe it's a certain interest. For me, the Obesity Society, I'm a member there and I participate there and present the research because my research is in a particular population and it's on obesity. So that's why I'm presenting there. Of course, obvious reasons with the American Public Health Association. And you get involved, join, become a member, get involved. And there are so many opportunities within those organizations. I think one of the sad parts of that is sometimes we become members for the sake of becoming members, and we have the membership, but we don't really do anything with it, which we don't get any benefit out of it that way. I know for me personally, when I first started my master's degree, I was able to I had a membership with the American Public Health Association, but it was free with my enrollment. So I didn't have to pay anything. I didn't think anything about it. My student status, it's a free membership. And I just said, okay, well, I'm a part of the association, and I never put any effort into anything. I didn't, try to participate or any networking or anything like that. So later on, when I really started to do that, I sort of regretted the time that I did not participate and make the most out of those opportunities. Of course, I can't go backwards and do anything about that now, but I certainly can encourage any of you that are a part of an organization but not really active, or maybe you just haven't really put the effort into looking for one or trying to find one. I really encourage you to do that. And there'll be more on that later, because I plan to discuss more about associations and provide some more resources in a future episode. But for right now, I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's a very important part of, being able to kind of build the bridge and make the connections, helping to make connections. So I have covered a lot, and I hope that it has been helpful for you all. And I will just wrap it up there and just encourage you to kind of, if you need to play this again, to kind of let it sink in. When the guide is prepared and I've, completed that, you'll be able to access that and download it. But these are some really important strategies and tips. Like I said, some of this is from my own personal experience and some of that is pulled from colleagues and what I've heard other people talk about. But these are things that you may not think are really impactful, but they are. And when you pull all of these tips together and you start applying this, you can develop a system for yourself that will really help you to be able to prepare yourself. You identify what you want, you figure out what you need to do to get there, you prepared yourself, you're presenting yourself in that light, and it's a mindset. You realize, okay, I can do this, I'm going to get there, it's going to happen, and you start going through the motions, and you've got a system in place, and you're ready. You're preparing yourself to transition. If it's 2, 3, 4 steps before you get ultimately where you want to be, that's okay, as long as you're making progress in that direction. You have a plan. If you don't have some sort of a plan, then it's always that thing you just talk about. So these are some really key important parts of that process, that plan and process. So I hope this is helpful for you. I thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to the next time. Please come back again, because next time we're going to continue a little bit further, and I'm going to break this down into and where I talk to a little bit more of segmenting my group out a little bit more. So we'll talk a little bit more about some more strategies to help you in this whole process of transitioning from the student status into the career that you want to be in. Until then, you all have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Careers Podcast at drchuntley.com.